Good morning, Good News Baptist Church. I'm happy to be with you once again. Now that we're in 2021, I'm excited. Last year is gone. All the problems of last year, they got resolved, right? A week and a half into 2021 and everything is going so much better. Not really. I don't know about you, and maybe it was, I don't know, maybe I'm not spiritual enough to have it be like a hymn or a psalm. But for me in 2020, just something that helped me kind of get through it was one song. I just kept on thinking of this one Beatles song called Here Comes the Sun. And in that song, they sing about, how they're waiting and looking forward to the sun coming back after a long and lonely cold winter. And they talk about how it's been years since it's been here, but here comes the sun. And I just kept on thinking that, 2021 is coming and that's like the sun and it's going to melt away all the problems. And nope, instead we got this. And this. And we even got this. I know for me it probably hits a little bit differently than it does for you. Seeing those images, for me it was very just incredibly disturbing as an American, just seeing that. But I think it speaks to what is going on probably a little bit better than anything else. People saw that and they wanted to immediately say, that's not who we are. Unfortunately, over the last few years, and I think as we get a little bit perspective, we'll see it going back even further. This is who we are. We live in a very divisive time, whether it's politics with conservative versus liberal, or whether it's what to do about COVID-19 and wearing masks and the effectiveness of vaccines, and whether the government can tell you not to be with your family, things like that. We live in very divisive times. All you have to do is go onto Facebook, and if you have the courage to wander in there, that battlefield, you'll see just the divisive climate that we all live in. Now, for us as Christians, we should be on the front lines of what's going on with this divisive climate. That we should be the ones who are wandering into this battlefield armed with truth to be able to speak from God, from His Word, and speak truth into the situation. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians are just muddying up the waters to not say what God says, but say what their opinion is, or what their politician says, or what a political party is saying, or what I read in this really good book that I found, things like that. And today we're going to look at something that Jesus tells us to be about making peace. If you'll turn your Bible to Matthew chapter 5, maybe you're already there, but Matthew chapter 5, starting at verse, let's just read it through. So verse 1. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I don't know if our text has ever been more relevant in our lifetime than right now in this divisive culture that we find ourselves in. Matthew chapters 5 through 7, famously known as the Sermon on the Mount, is this passage where Jesus teaches his disciples And a lot of people get this wrong. They get the whole Sermon on the Mount wrong. And it's a real tragedy because it's such a beautiful thing. But they think of the kingdom, and that's really what this sermon is all about. It's all about the kingdom. And they think of the kingdom as only being something that is far off. Like that they read the book of Revelation and they see, all right, New Jerusalem, and they say, well, that's the kingdom, and it's way out there. And it doesn't really have anything to do with what's happening right now. Or at least they would put a lot of distinctions between that kingdom and what's happening right now. But Jesus talks often about the immediacy of this kingdom. That the kingdom is here, the kingdom is upon you, the kingdom is in your midst, the kingdom is nigh. Repent, for the kingdom is nigh. So Jesus is always talking about the present nature of the kingdom and freely offers citizenship to that kingdom in the Gospels. And then in the epistles we see the gospel of the kingdom. That's what the gospel is known as right off the bat, is the gospel of the kingdom. And it's being shared. So it's not just something far off, but it is right now. So if you belong to Jesus, if you belong to the King, then you belong to the kingdom. And if you belong to the kingdom, then you got to ask yourself, how am I supposed to live right now in light of the kingdom? In light of the present nature of the kingdom, as well as being actually physically with Jesus in the end. How does that affect your right now? And that's really what the Sermon on the Mount is all about. It's really about the ethics of the kingdom, what you do, how you interact with people, how you interact with the world. That's what this passage is all about. And so we have these beatitudes, the blessings that Jesus gives out. Now, again, a lot of people get this wrong because they think of blessings, and because of just like the Christianese thing that we've done to blessing, maybe you put it at the end of your email or on a text message or in Facebook messages. You just write blessings or bless you, or something like that, and we've kind of lost the meaning of the word blessing, and we often just think about prosperity, even physical prosperity, that we could be somehow financially blessed by God because we read our Bible today, or we took that step of faith, or something like that, and that in some way kind of makes God our servant to give us this physical blessing. But that's not what this word means. When he comes here and he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, all of these, he's not saying physically they're going to be blessed. There's no change in these people's situations. We don't see them all of a sudden, becoming ancient equivalents of millionaires or something like that. We see them still struggling, but there is a happiness, and that's what this word really means. It means happy or fortunate one. It reminds me, I know I talked about the Beatles before, maybe this is a little too far, but CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival, I grew up listening to them. My mom was a hippie, so I listened to all the hippie music, and I still love it because it's great stuff. But CCR, they have a song called Fortunate Son. And for me, I love that song because I get the lyrics. It's about a man being sent off, just a normal guy, being sent off to the Vietnam War. And he's looking around and he's seeing these other guys that aren't going. He's seeing senators' sons, and he's seeing millionaire sons, and how they get to stay home, and how he has to go and face the brutality, the violence, the danger of war. And these other guys, because of their connections, because of their backgrounds, well, they just get to stay home. So they're the fortunate ones. They're safe, they're secure, they're happy because of their status. And that's really what we are, that we are fortunate ones. Maybe you're not going to get, $1 million because you're a Christian. That ain't going to happen. But you are still a fortunate one because you get to belong to the kingdom. You get to be a part of it. That not just in the future, which is great, by the way, but even now, you belong to the kingdom. You have a home. You have safety in knowing that the king is on your side, that you understand how to live your life. And that's really what this is about, is understanding that when you live in the ethics of the kingdom and you're following after the king, just how happy and fortunate you are that you avoid all the snares of this world, all the hurts and the pains that people who don't belong to the kingdom that they have to experience, and how unfortunate that is. But you are blessed, you are happy, you are fortunate because you belong to the king, and that happiness is right now. So even in the midst of 2021 and things that are going on down south and things going on here, to be honest, we still deal with a lot of racism here, even in Saskatchewan, Canada. So like we have our own issues. We have, of course, COVID. We have even as all the numbers are going up, danger of getting even further shut down, which, I mean, I don't know how more shut down we can get, but it's not fun times. But at the same time, during the midst of all this chaos and hurt and pain of 2020 and 2021, you can be happy and fortunate right now because you got Jesus, because you belong to the kingdom, because you have a home, you have a king who loves you, you have a blessed hope that you will eventually get to the place where you are physically with this king. I like the way William Osborne puts it. He says, this upside down ethics of the kingdom points to a reality that is not yet fully realized in the present, but ethically shapes us for the kingdom's fullness in the future. So even though what we experience as the kingdom is not the fullness of it, we're not physically in heaven, we're not physically with the king in his presence, but right now we can still feel that happiness, those blessings. It's like remember vacations. It's, I don't know when was the last time you had a vacation, but there used to be a lot of happiness when you booked your tickets wherever you were going. And, no matter what happened at work or in family stuff, what stresses were there, you kind of had those tickets, and you kind of lived your life in light of that light at the end of the tunnel, and knowing where you were going, the happiness that you were going to have going and visiting with family, or going someplace new, something fun, something for yourself. That's what it means here. This blessedness is this happiness that you have right now, even though you might be in the tunnel, the light is still at the end there, and that kind of affects how you interact with people. You kind of, you're just a little bit happier. That, like a couple days before vacation compared to like a couple months before, there's a big difference, right? And how you're just like, you can roll with the punches a little bit more. And that's us, that we can roll with the punches of 2021 because we know what's coming, that we belong to the kingdom. All right, so being blessed by Jesus is him expressing his eschatological favor, which gives us happiness right now. So at the end, there'll be this fullness of the kingdom, but right now you belong to the kingdom, and Jesus is giving you this happiness right now, that if you're in the moment and you're like, man, things are crummy, I'm not happy with how things are going, remember that you belong to the king. Remember all the blessings that you have of belonging to Jesus, and the blessings that are coming in the future, and let that happiness just soak into your soul. So who then are specifically blessed? Because we have all these different blessings, and they're for different aspects, different attitudes that we have as people belonging to the kingdom. So here we have in verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. So who are these peacemakers? Well, a peacemaker is someone who brings peace. And peace in the Old Testament is the Hebrew word shalom. In the New Testament, it's eirene, which means tranquility or harmony. It's a normal state of things, that things are going as they should be, that things aren't going in disarray, that there's not chaos. Here in my house, I'm in my living room right now, and I've got, all these things set up. You'd probably laugh at the setup that I have to make this look, height, everything just being level and whatnot. But right now, it's okay. But it's getting a little too dirty for me. I need things, especially in my living room and in my kitchen, to be tidy. Not necessarily clean. I'm not like cleaning everything all the time, but I'm definitely not one of those people that wants the house, to just be chaos, let the kids go wild, and, I can just be okay with that. I used to be, and then I lived in a very small house, and I needed everything to go in its rightful place. So I can't have chaos in the living room, or at least in the place where I'm at. I need things to go to where they belong. And that's what peace is. It's not chaos, it's not clutter, it's not things kind of working, it's everything going the way that it should be. So embedded in the whole concept of peace is the fact that there is a way things should be and a way things shouldn't be. So in that idea of peace, tranquility, harmony, is this concept of righteousness, this concept of a right state of things, that there should be a certain way things are happening. And we know that. We can look at 2020 and even last week in the capital of the United States, we can look at that and know that's not the way it should be. Right? Like, you probably felt that a lot in recent times of just, man, this is not the way this should be going. There's something in us that just screams, this isn't right. And so we can look at the world and see just the unrest that is happening, and we can know that there is no peace there, because there should be a way things happen. And when we see things happening in a way that it shouldn't, we understand that right now is not a peaceful time. Righteousness is the heart of peace. You can't have peace without it. John MacArthur, he says this: the peace about which Jesus speaks is more than the absence of conflict and strife. It is the presence of righteousness. So peace isn't just when you don't have fights with people, or that you're not getting into like arguments with others. It's not just that you are getting along with others. It's when things are like they should be, that there's this cohesiveness in how we live our lives, that there is just rest, that things are going the way that they should be. And that's something that the world just can't produce. A fallen world cannot produce the peace we need for today, but the King who reigns can, and he's called you to make peace today. So, how do we do that? How do we make peace in 2021 in this divisive climate as Christians, as ambassadors of the kingdom to which we belong? How do we live out the ethics of the kingdom in bringing peace? Well, I'll tell you 3 ways that it can't be done. The first one is by soothing. What I mean by that is that peace doesn't come by appealing to people and compromising. People do this in the church, they do this in their relationships, and they do it in the world. And they think, well, it's just about, finding that middle ground, and, you can just get along with people. It's just kind of soothing over the rough edges and just, get along. But that's not biblical peace. That's not really making peace. Biblical peace isn't about finding the middle ground. It's about finding the right ground. It's about standing up and saying, this is wrong or this is right based on the Word of God, and let's come to a conclusion of us acting on this or in accordance with this biblical truth. It doesn't come by just, kind of going, oh, okay, let's kind of come to a middle place here. You got good ideas, you got good ideas. Let's come and have some middle ground here. It doesn't come that way. It doesn't come through shirking. It's not about just evading issues or dodging bullets. I've known so many ministers, pastors, who act this way in their church, and they just think, well, if I can just avoid this, certain person at this business meeting, or maybe, I've even heard, like, maybe they're not going to come. Maybe they won't be there at this business meeting, and everything will go all right. Well, why don't you go and talk to that person? Why don't you kind of figure things out here? It's not about hiding or evading and just hoping that it dies down. It's not sidestepping. It's not about ignoring problems or sweeping things under the rug. Peace doesn't come by having a good reputation to the world, whether that's a personal thing, whether that's a church thing, whether that's just a Christian thing of trying to look good to people, and so you don't want to look like you're having any kind of arguments, so you just kind of throw it under the rug. You don't want people to find out about certain things that might lead to unrest. It's not about that. It's not about evading. It's not about sidestepping. And when issues are not confronted, these issues will erode relationships and cause unrest and division every time. Every time that you don't try to really make peace, biblical peace, there is going to be unrest, there's going to be division, and those relationships that maybe even if you're thinking about sidestepping, you're thinking about shirking, you're thinking about soothing, and you're thinking about it, well, I just don't want to affect that relationship. I got news for you. That relationship isn't going to last. You can only soothe, you can only shirk, you can only sidestep for so long before the truth comes out and there's conflict. So deal with that conflict now. For you, what conflict is going on in your life? Maybe you're having some arguments with a family member. Maybe you're going on to Facebook. I don't know. I'm not calling anyone out. I haven't seen anything, okay? But maybe you're going on to Facebook and saying some things you shouldn't, or getting into conflict there. Maybe you're at your workplace and you get into these arguments with your co-workers. We can have conflict anywhere. You could have conflict in your church right now. I don't know what's going on there. I pray that things are going well. I trust that things are going well. But if there isn't, if things are not, deal with those issues. Deal with them in a biblical way. Deal with them by making biblical peace, not by doing these things to kind of avoid the conflict. So we see this in our personal lives. We see it in the church. We see it even nationally. We saw it nationally even last week. But making biblical peace is building righteous relationships based on God's truth. It's not about all those other things that would create some kind of hollow peace, that there's just kind of like this thin layer. You can think of it like ice, that there's just kind of like this thin layer, and it kind of looks like that water, this pond maybe has a layer of ice on it, but you step on it and immediately go through. That's what this kind of hollow piece is like. We want a deep piece, a real piece that you could step on and be like, okay, this is something concrete. This is something substantial that I can, live my life on. So we want to make biblical peace by building righteous relationships based on God's truth. And we see some examples. We see some examples of this in the Old Testament specifically. We see like Nathan calling out the sin of David. I mean, think about that. The prophet goes to the king. The king could kill him, right? The king, and David has a temper, guys. So he could have gotten killed for that. But he went and said, "You are the man." He confronted the sin that the king had in his heart, that he had committed with Bathsheba, and all these awful things that he was a part of. And he confronted him on that. He confronted him based on biblical truth. We see it even in the New Testament. Paul calling out the sin of Peter, this hypocrisy that he had, that he was trying to act like he was still keeping the law, and Paul comes in and says, "What are you doing?" The hypocrisy there. Paul calls him out on that. We see it with the apostles, dealing with the issue of racism early on in the book of Acts. With the establishment of the deacons, it was because there was some racism that was happening against the Hellenist widows. And so there is this new office of deacon that's established there. They deal with it. They have conflict. They deal with it with a biblical and righteous decision. That's how we are to live our lives. That's how we make peace. It's about lovingly confronting sin and finding righteous solutions to reconcile relationships. John MacArthur again, he says it this way: peace is when the truth is known, the issue is settled, and the two parties embrace each other. That's what it means to have peace with other people. It's not avoiding things. It's definitely not avoiding accountability and hoping that no one finds out about certain things, and so that there can be like this, like I said, hollow peace, that things look good from a distance, but up close they are not. It's not that. It's about settling things. It's about conflict, dealing with that in a loving and biblical way, and finding righteous solutions to that conflict. And when you do that, when you make peace, and part of this happiness that we have is the fact that when you do that, you are the Son of God, the child of God. It is a masculine title, though here he says that they shall be called sons of God. So part of the blessing that we experience now, but that we're going to experience even further in the fullness of the kingdom, is that we are the sons of God. And certainly that refers to our salvation, primarily, that we are the sons of God. Jesus died on the cross so that we can be called the children of God, of course. But I think it goes beyond that to mean that we make peace, and when we do that, we resemble our Father. That we are acting like our Father. Our God is a peacemaking God, and we glorify Him by resembling Him toward others. So when we make peace, we resemble our Father. We are acting like our Father. We are having those same characteristics as our Father because God has made peace with us. And He's made it through His Son. Colossians chapter 1, starting at verse 19. For in Him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through Him to reconcile to Himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of His cross. So God has made peace with us. He's done it through offering His Son on the cross, the propitiation that Jesus made. He's made peace with us. So we, like Jesus says, we are to be about our Father's business. We should be making peace with others. The way that Paul says it is that we've been given the gift, the ministry of reconciliation, that we should be about making peace with this world. And we have something that no one else in this world has. Teddy Roosevelt, I used to think it was really clever what he said, but the longer I've been a Christian, the more I've learned it's a horrible thing. But he said that the way that he has made peace is by speaking softly and carrying a big stick. That's not what we do as Christians. We don't make peace through fear tactics. We don't make peace through empty rhetoric. We don't make peace through beating down the other side. We have the most precious, the greatest, the most beautiful weapon that the world has ever seen in making peace, called the gospel. And we make peace through that gospel. When we are saying it, when we are living it, when we are living just an attitude of that gospel, of being welcoming toward others, of being meek toward others, of being loving toward others, because God has done all those things for us. When we live out the gospel in that way, in our homes, in our workplaces, in our communities, wherever we find ourselves, online even. When we do that, we can make an impact in this divisive time and make peace, real peace that lasts, because it's not a peace of this world. It's a peace that comes from above, that is of the kingdom. And when we do that, we resemble the Father. I'll end with quoting Ray Ortlund here. He says, "The gospel being what it is and always will be, the message of reconciliation, our churches should be the most reconciling, peaceable, relaxed, happy places in town. We are so open to enemies, so meek in the face of insults and injuries, so forgiving toward the undeserving. If we do make people angry, let this be the reason. We refuse to join in their selfish battles. We're following a higher call. We are the peacemakers, the true sons of God." I'll ask Dylan if he wants to come forward and lead in prayer, or if you guys are having a song after. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for the opportunity to share the word with you. I love you. I'm praying for you, and I hope to see you soon.